Hello, I was going back through my old developer diaries and organizing them. I now have a playlist called like Thoughts on Other Games or something. So I was looking back at the games I talked about, and I was thinking I would have talked about every Silent Hill game because I'm kind of crazy for Silent Hill. But I noticed that I did not talk about Silent Hill 3, which is arguably my second favorite. Well, I wouldn't say arguably. I think it's my second favorite. Silent Hill 2 is my favorite, and then I would say 3. 3 is a very good game. It's very refined, and I think the gameplay is tight, and the environments are great, and it's scary and creepy, and they have some really great things. In particular, I like the sort of escalator that goes to nowhere. And I kind of stole that for Neverending Nightmares with the asylum. When you walk outside the asylum, it just floating dead space. I don't know what you'd call it. So it seems odd I didn't talk about Silent Hill 3, but I think it's difficult to. While Silent Hill 3 is a great game, I don't think it stands out quite as much in sort of the pantheon of Silent Hill games. I talked about Shattered Memories, which had new mechanics, and I talked about Silent Hill 4, which I think it was brilliant but flawed, to a way that it wasn't super enjoyable, and Shattered Memories was kind of flawed too. I guess I did one on Silent Hill Origins, which probably I shouldn't have. There wasn't a lot to say. Mostly I ended up just ranting about emulators. I've also played Homecoming and Silent Hill 1, and Silent Hill 1 would be an interesting one to talk about. Homecoming, I don't have a lot to say. But Silent Hill 3, I definitely should have a lot of things to say, especially because I've been thinking about it a lot, and the thing that at least is most interesting about Silent Hill 3 to me right now is the beginning of it. Now, I don't know if you played Silent Hill 3 or, Neverending Nightmares, or if you play a lot of horror games, usually it's kind of a slow descent. So, that was a big theme in Neverending Nightmares, descent, and the way we balanced the tension, and things just got worse and worse, and the tension went up and up. And even Silent Hill 2, arguably they did an almost physical descent, where you have to walk down a hill into the mist of Silent Hill, and then things get... And certainly I think Silent Hill 2's intro is really well done. Everything in Silent Hill 2 is really well done, but Silent Hill 3 took a completely different approach, which I think is very interesting, and something I'm potentially considering for the next title, where they just sort of throw you in the fire. So it starts and it takes place in sort of a nightmare, I guess. I don't remember exactly how they fit into the narrative, but you start out and you're in the other world, It's dark and scary, and there's enemies, and I think you have weapons that you later lose or have to find again, and they just sort of throw you in there, and it sort of grabs you by the balls, at the beginning of the game, and I think that's sort of an interesting idea, and you can see that in some horror movies. Well, they'll start out and they'll introduce the killer, or they'll see his last couple kills or whatever, and then he'll walk to a new area, and then it'll say now entering Pleasantville or whatever, and then the killer's going to Pleasantville. I don't know. Maybe it's just Criminal Minds or something. I watch a lot of Criminal Minds. There's some screwed up stuff in Criminal Minds, and certainly I use some of that for reference in Neverending Nightmares. But yeah, I think Criminal Minds and starts with the killer oftentimes, and the killer is usually pretty disturbed. Silent Hill 3 did that, and it was interesting, and I really liked the slow build of tension in Neverending Nightmares, and to me Neverending Nightmares is kind of like Audition, which is a terrific movie, and it definitely it definitely is a slow build-up, and too slow for some people's tastes. And I would argue that Neverending Nightmares is also too slow for some people's tastes. Which I don't think is necessarily a negative thing about Neverending Nightmares, but I think it's definitely something with a very deliberate pace, and that was sort of all designed from the beginning. But, for another project, I'm not necessarily committed to that pace, and so I'm interested in the idea of Silent Hill 3. Another interesting thing about Silent Hill 3 is that it would demo well. So we have a demo up on the Ouya store, and that's not really, I mean, that was just sort of, we weren't thrilled about having a demo because it's very difficult to do a good demo, and I've heard, friends who said, their companies did research, and demos just convince people not to buy a game. It doesn't actually bring anyone who wouldn't have bought the game anyway to purchase it. And I have no idea if that's true. Certainly I think that was like a AAA sort of study, and maybe it's different, when you have a giant marketing budget and all that. But if you look at our demo for the Ouya version, right now it's the first level, The Nightmare Begins, whereas our Kickstarter demo was the second level, The Coming Storm. Now, the first level isn't super interesting. Again, it's just sort of that slow build-up. And so it's possible that, we're not selling as well as we could on Ouya because people aren't really buying into the demo. And it's a short demo. I mean, the entire game is short, so it's difficult to show enough to whet people's appetite, but not get them to stop purchasing it. Like, for example, Towerfall. I played a lot of Towerfall, well, not a ton, but I played Towerfall with my wife and really enjoyed it, but we didn't buy the actual game, and now I feel guilty, because, I like supporting indie developers, so maybe I need to go back and buy Towerfall. But the reason I mentioned Towerfall, other than making myself feel guilty, was that I played the demo and I was satisfied. I didn't feel like I needed anything more. And I think they actually went back with Towerfall Ascension on Ouya and removed the demo completely. Which I think is a really smart idea, because then jerk-offs like me, would be forced to buy the game. So, I think, demos can be a negative thing, and certainly talked to Alexander Bruce, very, very smart person, and he was saying that he definitely did not want to do a demo for Antichamber, and the reason was that basically he wanted people, completely in the world, and not, do a little pop-up like, hey, buy the game now, or hey, it ends. He wanted people to start and then keep playing. And certainly I think that's something Antichamber does really well, especially the beginning. You're hooked. So I mean, that's like with Neverending Nightmares, we couldn't put a paywall like after a time period because we have a very deliberate pacing. It's slow. We want you to take your time. If we say, 10 minutes and then, the game ends, then that would be bad, and certainly, you want to sort of put your best stuff forward for the demos. You show what's really compelling about the game. So, Silent Hill 3, and I don't know if they even offered a demo, but because of the way they paced it, you could demo the first level, and then you would have a good idea of all the gameplay sort of hooks and the type of enemies and how the game works, and then without trying not to say and trying really hard. But you could have a demo without taking something from a later section of the game, which for this, sort of pay and upgrade functionality in a lot of demo systems doesn't, is important. Whereas it used to be your demo would just be a separate thing, and then if you wanted to, if you bought the game, it didn't share the save at all. It would just, separate EXE, separate everything. But now I think people like the idea of, hey, you buy the demo or you play the demo and then you can unlock it. Certainly that's how it's done on Ouya, and that used to be a requirement. But certainly Silent Hill 3 has a good way of grabbing you. Now, it might be difficult to do something like that when your mechanics aren't already established, because Silent Hill 2 plays a lot like Silent Hill 3. I think it's a little tighter, but basically if you know how the game works, then you're going to know what to do in Silent Hill 3. Whereas if you're starting a sort of a new IP or something with different mechanics, you can't slowly introduce mechanics. And I think that's a great way to design a game, is basically you add mechanics and get people comfortable with one thing, and then you add something new. I think it's a common game design thing. So, I don't know, Silent Hill 3 is brilliant. I probably should have spent more time talking about Silent Hill 3. But I'm just curious what you guys think of the pacing of Silent Hill 3, and if you think it's something you'd like to see in our next project. So, thanks for watching.